In this example, we'll be looking at how to use Sonocent Audio Note Taker to support students with writing through audio storytelling. Audio storytelling allows a wide range of reluctant writers, students with special educational needs, students who have English as additional language, and also English language students to be able to express themselves through audio. During this process, students are scaffolded through from speaking to listening to writing, and the outcome for students is they will be able to express their thoughts through writing. And finally, from a teacher's perspective, they will also be able to assess and feedback on the progress that the students have made. The way that audio storytelling would work for a teacher is for them to create a file very similar to the one that we see on the screen. The way this has been done is that the teacher has initially incorporated some images, which they can do very simply by either copy and pasting or inserting those images, and then also being able to type in either sentence starters or thoughts to get the students thinking about the way they might like to structure their story. When this file is created, it can be then sent to the students via email or shared via shared area or VLE or LMS system, and then the student can use this to again begin to record their thoughts in order to allow them to complete the sentence starter shown on screen to write a story. So by pressing record, we would now be imagining that we're recording the voice of the student, and on screen what's being shown is the different parts of that student's story visualized in our colored chunks. When the student has completed part of their first element of their story, they can stop and they can then go back and listen back to each element of their story. If, for example, they believe that this section here is no longer relevant or they would like to improve it, they can simply delete it and then re-record, much the same as using a word processor, except what we're doing here is using it in audio form. The second stage of audio storytelling may be that as a teacher, you can provide feedback to the student in terms of their progress. So using the colour key that we have incorporated here under storytelling, we're able then as a teacher to listen back to this story and then give the students feedback by giving particular colours to each of the audio chunks. Also as a teacher, it's very possible, as you'll see down here, to be able to give feedback as a teacher on that particular story. Another way of using audio storytelling is that the student may then like to listen back to this audio using the pause mode and then feel that they may wish to type their story into the text pane. Once they're happy with this story, what the student can then do is use the export function, text and images, and they then can convert the text column here into a Word document. This then means that the student can complete and create a story using audio as the source, but actually still submitting it and evidencing it in the same way as they usually would. So when we click on OK, we're able to create a story, save that in a location of our choice, and then we can view the story or even submit it to the teacher in the way that we usually would. In this example, we'll be using Sonocent Audio Note Taker to create a guided reading file. This example allows teachers to support reluctant writers at primary, elementary, ELL level to allow them to be able to assess the progress of reading and give feedback objectively. The outcome for students is that they can listen to their progress and understand both the strengths and weaknesses in their reading. From a teacher's perspective, they're able to actually give much better feedback in terms of audio feedback and also share that feedback with colleagues, parents and students in both an objective and a timely manner. The guided reading file is based upon the national curriculum in the UK, the way that teachers will have to evidence the progress of students have made in terms of their reading. The way that this file was created very simply was that the teacher incorporated an image of the book the student was reading. They also gave some information about when the book was being read, and the final two columns were completed when the student was reading to the teacher. In the audio column, what you'll notice is that the student's voice has been recorded and visualized in the color chunking system within Sonocent Audio Note Taker. In order to assess the progress of the student, the teacher has incorporated AF1 to AF7 criteria, which simply are just objectives that the student needs to meet. Once the student is reading, the teacher will record, and when they feel that they've hit or achieved a particular objective, they can simply click to colour that piece of audio in. At the end of this process, teachers very visually can see the different progress areas that the students have achieved, and also then be able to use this information to much clearly drill down and look at individual objectives. So using the extract function, what the teacher can do is extract audio and decide to look at any one or combination of the different criteria the student needs to hit. When they click OK, another file will be generated and simply show the teacher examples of whereby the student has achieved the particular criteria shown. In this example, we'll be using Sonocent Audio Note Taker to show how audio and visual write-ups can be completed by students in a range of different subjects. This example is relevant for reluctant writers of all ages and very applicable to both vocational and applied learning contexts, particularly within an FE setting or community college setting. The objective here is really to allow students to evidence their work when writing may be both challenging or, due to the type of activity, may not actually be appropriate. The outcome at the end of this activity is for students to be able to achieve the learning outcomes set by the class teacher, but without actually having the necessity to actually write for all of those tasks. The outcome for the teacher is to be able to assess and feedback to students using audio in both a timely manner and allow all students to succeed, particularly those students who find it challenging to write. In the audio-visual write-up, the example that we're using here is based on a science experiment, but this example can also very clearly be used in any activity where there is a practical or element where the student is creating. So maybe that be art, design, geography, PE, physical education. There are a range of different options where this example can be used. Very simply, the teacher first of all has inserted questions that they would usually have written upon the board within the classroom. What they have then done is given this file to a student to then answer those questions using both audio and visuals. When we open up the images pane and we also up the audio pane, we'll notice that the students have then completed this activity using both visuals and audio. The way that they did this is that at different stages of this particular experiment, they took photographs using digital camera, their mobile phones, or even they could use the free Sonocent Recorder app to do this. And secondly, in the audio column, they had then spoken their answers to each of these questions. What's also worth noting here again is that each of the different colours are differently representing students within that particular group. So as a teacher, what's very clear is that you will be able to assess the progress of different students by actually extracting the different colours for each student. So if you wish to just assess the progress of Laura, we can very easily do that by simply extracting out any audio or examples of where this student has given feedback. As we also scroll through the file, what we'll also notice is an opportunity for a teacher to give feedback in audio form, and then also for students too, therefore completing a formative feedback loop, which could be very important for many courses where feedback is a feature of the overall assessment. In this example, we'll be looking at how Sonocent Audio Note Taker can help students with creating exam questions through an example called Exam Question Analysis. The example here is very much aimed at students of exam age who find structuring an exam question or answer rather very challenging. The way of using this particular example is to allow students to develop a range of skills that are required for a particular examination. The objective really here is to allow teachers both to model best practice and also to allow students to assess the structure of their own exam answers and those of their peers to allow them to improve upon the quality of the answers they provide. In terms of outcomes for the student, the outcome at the end of using this particular example is they'll be better placed to be able to create an exam answer and knowing the various different structures and approaches to a particular question. The outcome for the teacher in this example is to be allowed to model and also assess the progression of students in their understanding of creating exam answers. The file that has been created here, very simply, has been initially created by the teacher. The teacher has incorporated perhaps an exam question or exam case study into the images pane and then also typed the question into the text pane. The next stage of this is to provide this to the student, who will then use the audio pane to record themselves speaking their answer to this particular question. Once this has been completed, the teacher, the student, or even a peer can use the colour key here to assess whether for this particular examination the student has achieved the different assessment objectives that are listed. This also then can be taken further by creating a separate feedback section which can be used by peers, by themselves, or even actually by a teacher to provide feedback on the answer created. In doing this, students then can assess the structure of their answer, maybe edit the structure, and also look at where perhaps they may want to change perhaps the way they've answered this question. A next stage then may be to use this to transcribe the answer they've written, or in fact use this as a reference guide when they go on to complete other answers that are similar. In this example, we'll be using Sonocent Audio Note Taker to create an essay plan and also create an essay to be submitted by a student. The context of this example is that students who are writing essays at all levels and other academic work will be supported from using their notes within a particular classroom setting and then progressing those to completing an essay or a piece of academic writing. They will allow to organise their thoughts and also their tasks, and the outcome at the end is that they can actually submit a piece of work in Microsoft Word as they would in any other situation. The outcome for the teacher is that they are able to gain essays that have been created by all of their students, regardless of the academic challenges that that particular student may have. In this example, the student initially will use Audio Note Taker for the prime purpose of Audio Note Taker, which of course was note taking. The student can record their lesson as is shown here with the audio bars and then use the colour keys to indicate different elements of this particular session. The second phase of this process was that after the lesson the student then can listen back and they can also then begin to write some thoughts into the text pane in terms of what they were thinking when they were listening to that particular piece of information. They can also insert a section, which they've done here, and call that an audio summary. The audio summary just gives the student the opportunity to actually create a 30-second review of what they have created within that particular lesson. The next phase is for the student to uncover the reference pane. In here, what the student will be able to do is, once they've listened back to the audio, gather some thoughts, finally they will then be able to bring in some references that pertain to each of these two sections, meaning that their essay plan is already coming together at the very early stage of their learning. Finally, they will then be able to insert images into the images pane, either by copy and pasting or simply by right-click on the images pane and importing those. So here we have the source, the references, the ideas and the initial audio. The students then can edit this, manipulate it, and finally they may then decide to listen back and begin to actually transcribe their thoughts into Audio Note Taker. Once they're happy with this, they can then export text and images and then just decide to export the text pane. This then will be created in terms of a Word document, and this can then be submitted to the instructor or the teacher.